Okay, so yeah, let's begin the session.
Okay, great. So with this, we would begin the session. A very warm good morning to everyone who's present here. It is rightly said that if you aim to change the world, journalism is an immediate weapon. With this, I, Divyanshi Shukla, welcome you all to this session of Policy Conclave 22. In the words of Henry Grunwald, journalism can never be silent. That is its greatest virtue and its greatest fault. It is a fact universally acknowledged that journalism is the voice of a democracy. It is the bridge between public and the administration, a determining factor in analyzing the nuances of policy making. To dive into the topic, how journalism impacts public policy, we are glad to have with us Mr. Sanjay Abhigyan. Welcome, sir.
Hello, good morning.
He is currently the executive editor and the state head with the Amar Ujala group, Uttarakhand. He is the founder editor of Amar Ujala Kavya, a microsite dedicated to poetry that won 2 INMA awards in 2018. Along with this, he has more than 5 years of experience in digital domain and has worked across media organizations, including the Navbharat Times for 18 years, Hindustan for 5 years, and the Amar Ujala Group for 10 years. Recently, he has been selected to represent Indian Hindi media in an international project to develop a health reporting training course for mid-career journalists. He has also been a part of senior delegation that visited the Oxford University. His accomplishments and experiences do not end here. Sir, I would now request you to commence with the session.
Okay, thank you, Divyanshi. Good morning, all. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Looking forward to a very fruitful discussion with you all, friends. The topic is vast, how journalism impacts policy making, and time is limited. So I would start right away. In order to keep my discussion coherent, I have made a small presentation. I think if we go through the structured way, the session would be more productive. Can we start this? Yes. Next slide, please. Okay. Topic, how journalism affects policy making. Well, as a journalist, is definitely, I feel it definitely affects, but how, this is what we would be looking at. Next slide, please. You see, we all exist in a public life, and the public life is represented by a grand interplay of 3 spheres. What are these 3 spheres? Look forward. Next slide, please. These are the 3 spheres. Government spheres, that includes all the legislature, even judiciary, we can also include that in that. Another entity is corporate sphere. We all know what this term means. And then the public sphere. Now, this is the last term is something I want to talk about. The public sphere is something where media is dominantly present. And it would be beneficial for all of us to define public sphere in the first place. We define public sphere as all the places and forums where issues of importance to a political community are discussed and debated, and also where information is presented that is essential to citizen participation in community life. So this is a very important sphere, and media is dominantly present here. And in fact, media is the common link of all these 3 spheres. Next slide, please. Media is also the loudest voice of polity. You just switch on the television, the news channel, you have news in front of you. You open the newspaper in the morning, you have news in front of you. And now, as we will discuss later on, the news sharing has become a 24/7 experience, thanks to the advent of web journalism. Next slide, please. How it works. let's look into. Next, please. Basically, there are three ways through which media affects policy making or the public opinion. The first and foremost is information. Can we go back to the first slide? Yes, information. And here, when we discuss about information, which is the principal and primary role of media, we have to be very careful about defining it. As a journalist, I must point out that by information, we imply a verifiable, evidence-based, factual reporting that would in turn lead to credibility of the given mind product. By mind product, I mean newspaper or the particular television news program that you are witnessing. Verifiable. Whatever we say, whatever we present as news, there has to be verified in the newsroom. There has to be a system of verifying the news. Otherwise, a news is nothing. But it will become fake news if we can't verify it. Evidence-based. This is all the more important. You have to have the evidence behind whatever news item you present. And credibility, I think this is the buzzword. This is the main, this is the soul of every journalistic effort. Until you develop the credibility, the reader or the viewer or the user of your content won't entertain you. You are defined by the credibility of the news source. If you are a newspaper, you have to have that credible place in the eyes of the readers. If you are a news channel, the viewer must respect you and must believe that whatever is being told to them is something to be relied upon. It is believable. So credibility is the essence of journalism. Next slide, please. The second most important way through which media affects policy making is the opinion. So information and opinion. Opinion is integral part of, I think, any news outlet. And what do we mean by opinion making? Well, when editors, experts, and thought leaders explain and provide insights into current affairs. Now, this is the generation of opinion. You know, people, especially in our country, where the literacy levels are yet to attain a comfortable level, you have to explain what is being told to them. This won't be sufficient to just tell them the news. How the given fact or the given news will impact their life, how it will touch their personal domain. One has to explain this. And here comes the importance of the editorial page of newspapers or the special talk shows that explain about the events. So in a way, apart from being informative journalism, another important duty of journalists, modern day journalists, is to explain what a given fact or a given news means for the common man. So next slide, please. Third major way through which media affects policy making is through campaigns. By campaigns, we mean first identifying a cause for the given community. So let it be environment or the trees, the pathetic condition of trees planted in the city. So just for example, so how do you call attention of the society or of the government? So generally a campaign is run by a multimedia approach. You see, as you know very well, we have already entered the era of convergence of journalism. That is a convergent newsroom where different kind of news outlets merge, you know. Now, you can watch news, you can read newspaper through your mobile. I mean, this is all. Your mobile is an excellent example of convergent platform of news. So what do we do while we unleash a campaign? We use our website, we use online polling, we invite readers' comment, we invite UGC, user generated content, that we'll be talking about later on also. We would continuously publish news items for the given cause or for the change that we want to introduce. So multimedia public opinion mobilization through newsroom has become a very important phenomenon, and we will be discussing more about it. But I must underline here, audience, that this is the way a given media outlet assumes the role of a change agent. How media leads to change. How does a journalist transform himself or herself into a change agent? Okay, next slide, please. Now, these three broad ways actually lead you to some good examples and the few major trends that have emerged in these years. We must, in order to understand the process of this journalism and policy making connect, you have to appreciate and you have to understand these new trends and these new best practices. Next slide, please. The first, I must draw your attention to the 24/7 type service journalism. Why I call it 24/7? Well, earlier, say 20-25 years back, the news was something that happens in the morning with a cup of tea. You just go through the pages of a newspaper. That was all. The news, your interaction of a common man with news was a morning affair. After that, you go to your shop or you go to your office or your classroom, if you are a lecturer, whatever you do, but news interaction was limited to the morning hours. But now you have this thing called mobile. Every minute, a news item strikes your mailbox. Every hour, you have some scintillating news items, and not only limited to your area or your country. Global news also reaches you in seconds. And what do we mean by service journalism? So the first point is that news is no longer limited to morning. The news is something, the news flow is chasing you throughout the day. The second thing, what service journalism means. Now, this is something, a very new thing. By service journalism, we imply that those kind of report items that help you in your day-to-day affairs. Just to give you one example, you enter a mall, you're in a mood to shop with your wife, you go out, you just enter any mall, and suddenly you find there is a message on your mobile that if you go to the second floor of this mall, you will find this sale or this particular item being sold on discount. So whatever you do, you just typed, where can I go for, I want to watch a movie, and suddenly you have all news items like clicking or knocking at the door of your mailbox that you can do this movie, here are the movie reviews, you choose what you want to do. Or suppose you want to pay your electricity bill, and suddenly you see there are websites helping you in that. You have entered a new city, you're starting living in a new city, and then there are websites and news websites that would help you in deciding where you can find the plumber, where you can find the electrician. So these are all examples of service journalism. The journalism, the reporting that is committed to make your day-to-day life easier. How? The service journalism or service journalists guide you. They help you in your decision making in your home affairs. Which tuition, like where are the which tutors, which is the site that will guide you about the tutors for your son or daughter, like where you can find the best whitewash material. How can you access, say, the laundries or the good housemates, maids, you see? So this is all examples of service journalism. There are news items that will tell you in the morning, please avoid this particular road. There is expected to be a massive jam today because some political rally is going on, or some political function, or some government event is taking place. So please avoid that road. What is this? This is not the typical journalism. This is actually the service journalism that will help you, guide you in your day-to-day affairs. Second most important, people-centric news making. As an editor, I have seen this transformation for last, say, about a decade or so time. I mean, many years, we talk about people-centric news making. Whatever we decide to publish today, that has to be guided by the simple principle: who is my reader? Who are the actual ground level problems of readers at large? By people-centric news making, we mean in order to create the reader connect, we have to touch upon all those issues that relate to his day-to-day life. Now, this is actually a very important and very pious, I would say, theme for modern day newsroom, that we have to be defined by people. This is, in essence, a democratic value of journalism across the world. So what and how do we do that? How do we ensure the people-centric news making? We define core issues of reporting in three major news media groups I have worked in: Times Group, or HT Media, or presently Amar Ujala Group. Now, I have seen this practice in all these three groups, the defining core issues of reporting. For example, in Amar Ujala, we have a clear set of priorities, the core issues. And what are these? Traffic, the day-to-day traffic. Number two, education. Then development, local development, development of the city. Medical, healthcare, the condition of health services. I'll give you many examples. In Dehradun, I discovered, when I came to this city 3 years back, I discovered that the main government newsroom, the main government hospital has simply no MRI machine. There was one, but that lying, in the junkyard, it's not functioning. So for many months, we ran a campaign that we must have, the biggest government hospital in the city must have a basic thing like MRI machine. So healthcare. These are examples of core issues of reporting. I remember when I entered journalism 3 decades back, we didn't talk on these lines. For us, the journalism was something that is there only to what you call it, oust the governments. As if, you have to do only investigative journalism that leads to fall of the government. No. We have realized, and for the better and for the good, that our reporting has to address the common day-to-day problems of the citizens, our reader. And that has led to something called citizen journalism across the world. And by the way, whatever changes I am talking about, these are not limited to India. These are universal practices. Citizen journalism is another manifestation of people-centric newsmaking. Now, I remember there is a newspaper in Sweden or something, some other European country that invites common citizens to their evening newsroom so that they take their opinion. What should they cover tonight? What should be the topics on which editorial would be written? So this is actually, journalism is no longer a one street or one way phenomenon. This is becoming interactive. This is two-way, multi-way. Whatever we write, we must know what my reader or user is thinking about. And thanks to the technology, in seconds or in hours, we come to know the reception of our news, the feedback of readers. More so in website journalism, you come to know how many readers are going through my content. You have instant real-time updation on the fact. So citizen journalism is something all newspapers are catering to. And when we talk of people-centric newsmaking, when we talk of core issues, they all mean that we are actually assuming the role of public. We are becoming the true voice of polity of the readers. And then how can government not listen to us? How can they not make policies based on the feedback and based on the sensitization campaigns drive that we run? So this is, you see, I'm broadly taking you to the process through which journalism actually affects. This is the dynamics. So apart from citizen journalism, we have user-generated content. In many websites and in newspapers too, we have opened our door for user-generated. You are a user of my website. You are a reader. You are a regular user. You are a unique visitor or not. But you can put your ideas. Just imagine you are going through a YouTube video and you have hundreds of reactions in the comment box. For me, I personally try to go through these comments so that I could get the mood of the public on any particular given subject or topic. So user-generated content, UGC, has become integral to modern day newsroom or journalism. Reader connect is something that we get after practicing all the above things. The people-centric things, the citizen journalism 24/7. And when journalists achieve, or the newspapers or news channels earn this reader connect, how can policymakers ignore them? How can policymakers ignore them? And that is why they are bound to respond to us favorably, and journalism will definitely have impact. Next slide, please. Next, please. Okay. Let us go through some recent examples. And here I must point out that these relate to different scales: micro level impacts, small territory campaigns and impacts, and then macro level, the changes or the policy impact that we have that affect multiple states or at the country level. So next, please. Well, these are, I have selected some recent examples. Farmers' agitation. I just want to ask a question. Of course, you will be asking questions afterwards, and I am about to finish in 5 to 6 minutes. Would this rollback of farm laws be possible if there was no reporting on farmer agitation, if the farmers' unrest was not covered properly? Do you think the government, the central government, would have rolled the laws back, the farm laws? Now, this is something unprecedented. I mean, nobody actually could believe that one day the central government would actually roll back. Now, I think this is the most recent and most powerful example of how journalism impacts policy making. Another example, Heli ambulance. I am presently working in Uttarakhand state, where most of the hill areas are actually in a very bad shape. As tourists, we go and enjoy the beauty of mountains, but those who live there, who are living there, who are there for centuries, for decades, they know how difficult it is to live life in mountains. If somebody falls ill, God forbid, it is a hell of a job to reach to the hospital, because there are simply no roads. In 50% Uttarakhand, especially in upper hills, there are many places which are yet to witness a thing called motorable roads. So what do you do if somebody falls sick or in a medical emergency? The basic thing is heli ambulance. These are election days, and you see hundreds of helicopters are roaming around across Uttarakhand. But after elections, what happens? I was amazed to understand and know that the helicopter ambulance service is yet to start when I came to the state of Uttarakhand 3 years back. So what we did, we structured a campaign on this particular subject. Amar Ujala being the leader in this area, we unleashed this campaign. We wrote a series of articles and news items that please earmark expenditure for helicopter ambulance. This is the basic thing that a Uttarakhandi common man deserves. It definitely made an impact. The government had to earmark the budget for that, and for every district they approved 2 heli ambulances. Fine. Maybe the impact is limited to a state only, but it is definitely something that I think journalists have earned. Now, this is how we lead to policy level changes, though on a limited scale. Again, another example, vaccine hesitancy. Now, as Divyanshi told in the beginning, I am working on an international project that basically works against vaccine hesitancy. And we are particularly working on the news writing that actually helps in mitigating or reducing this vaccine hesitancy. You know, unfortunately, there are groups, there are lobbies that work against vaccine campaigns. There is religious opposition. Then there is this green lobby thing that says that nothing synthetic should be injected into our body. And there are other like political objections, like there are groups which see vaccination drives as a Western design to limit the population of their community. So the world over, this vaccine hesitancy is being witnessed. And after Corona, I think after the pandemic, we all are realizing that how vaccines have helped us and how they prove to be life-saving. And this is something the mankind is witnessing for last 5 or 6 decades. But still, you know, there is like opposition to vaccine drives everywhere, and even in developed countries like United Kingdom. So what we have done, I can there is definitely an impact. In Roorkee, for example, there is a place called Heli. This is a village dominated by Muslim community, and there is a madrasa, and there was strong opposition to this vaccine drive. So we unleashed a campaign, in fact, across North India, in all editions of Amar Ujala, whose theme was Tika hi bachayega. Only vaccine will save you. And I think we published hundreds of stories. We wrote, we asked officials, we did the whistleblowing that please visit this area, please go there. There is all vaccine hesitancy is concentrated in a particular this area, and that definitely had impact. So I have many examples of news reportings in Amar Ujala where the entire area opened up. Then they started welcoming vaccination teams. So this is something, I think this is actually writing or reporting for life in favor of science and life. And here, again, journalism helps a lot. Another example, GDP versus GEP, gross domestic product, we all know. But what is this GEP? This is gross environmental product. Now, this is something which is now, we wrote constantly about it. And we took the help of environmentalists like Anil Joshi here in Uttarakhand, who is a Padma Bhushan. And he has been, his organization, HESCO, has been working relentlessly on this concept of gross environmental product that is defining all economic activity in terms of environment. What is its impact on environment, and how can you actually, how can you put it in monetary terms, the impact on environment, positive or negative? And that has led to actually introduction of GEP yardstick in policy making of Uttarakhand. We have wrote extensively on this and carried again hundreds of news stories. And finally, the government has recognized the concept of GEP here. Then Uttarakhand state formation. With all humbleness, I would like to point out that in the formation of Uttarakhand state, the role of media was very positive, and of course, Amar Ujala was at the forefront, and many credit our newspaper behind this successful campaign of Uttarakhand state. Another example, small one, free and tree drive, free the tree drive. You must have seen the trees on footpath on any given city in the country, particularly in Dehradun, where you find trees like being burdened with all kinds of billboards, slogans, and then nailed with all kinds of posters are nailed. So, and then sometimes the tree guards are not changed, so the trees overgrow in comparison to the tree guards, and then they find themselves entangled in the tree guard itself. So basically, to ensure that the trees, which are a treasure for a state like Uttarakhand, that where the forests are worshipped, the plight of trees must be highlighted. So we ran a campaign last year, and it actually led to an immediate impact. I mean, within 2 weeks of publishing this campaign, government started freeing all the tree guards and trees from all such posters, banners, and iron nails. So I think in a small way, journalists of Amar Ujala contributed towards the betterment of our environmental, the environment, local environment, and the tree wealth that the city and the state has. Again, COVID orphan drives. You see, that was the most unfortunate part of this pandemic, that there were like thousands of children that who lost their parents suddenly within a week or so. So what we did, we again unleashed a campaign called Amar Ujala Apnatva Abhiyan, that actually called upon people and government to do something for these orphans, for their rehabilitation. And it definitely made an impact. And government also recognized Amar Ujala's voice in this. We were able to sensitize our leaders, and actually government announced a clear policy towards the rehabilitation and adoption of these orphans. So these are some examples. The list is very long. As I told you, journalism leads to many, countless small impacts also, but only the big impacts or the big news events come to the knowledge of common public. There are hundreds of or thousands of impacts that remain behind the camera, or what you call it, in the low profile, but they are no less important. They are equally important. So with this, I am almost done. Last slide is something that I have added to just enrich the discussion a little more. Can we go to the next slide, please? And this is the last one. Few misconceptions. While we discuss this connect between journalism and policy making, I think there are some widespread misconceptions which, as listeners to this discussion, I think everyone should go through and understand that a common impression is that English journalism has more impact. Nothing can be farther than truth, you see. Actually, as we grow and as we go outside the boundaries of metro cities, we realize that English journalism actually has a limited impact. It is confined to cities only. And the moment you go beyond, at the moment you go beyond cities, you find that the rule of local languages starts. You know, the hinterland, the country is ruled by language journalism, and definitely it has more impact. You see, when most of, and you just go through, if you are interested in the subject, you will see that most of the cities, their local language newspapers, be it Bangla, Odia, Tamil, Telugu, they outnumber the English newspapers. So language journalism also has impact, and in fact more impact. Another thing is gross generalizations that I see as a senior journalist. Sometimes I feel pain about it. The gross generalizations that I see on many platforms, that fake news and Godi media all pervasive everywhere you find. No. Let's all be clear about this thing, that there are well-defined self-regulatory mechanisms within media that are taking care of fake news thing. We actually, the loudest whistleblowing against fake news was from within media only. So it is not that pervasive. Yes, there are items due to social media advent, and also, you know, when there is some big technological disruption with immense benefits, you also get some negative points or challenges. So with time, you overcome that, you develop the regulatory mechanisms. So I think the media across the country and across the world is handling the thing called fake news effectively. And at the end, we still have, if the most of the news sources and media outlets, they ensure that the process of news sharing remains credible, verifiable, and evidence-based. Similarly, Godi media, this is again, I think, a term coined by a few journalists. This is also unfortunate. We must understand this very clearly, that the whole journalistic setup in our country is a huge one. It's beyond our expectation. I don't know how many of you know, friends, that in our country, the total number of registered newspapers is more than 1 lakh. More than 1 lakh registered newspapers are there. So if 1 or 2 or 3 news outlets are not serving or not true to the ethics of journalism, this would be wrong to brush the entire media or entire 1 lakh set of newspapers as Modi media. This is something very unfortunate. Let me remind you what Jim Collins said in his famous book that you must have gone through, The Good to Great, that the true leaders are there behind the curtain and they work like hedgehogs. They avoid limelights. Unfortunately, Indian media has been dominated by a few names of newsroom heroes, but they do not represent the entire media. The so-called few faces or few news channels or few papers, they are only a very small subset of the entire set of Indian journalism. So it would be wrong to define entire journalism or entire media as Modi media. No, still, as I tell you, as I explain, that most of the journalism belong to a small impact and service journalism and citizen-centric, people-centric journalism in small cities, the real country, the real India. And that is, it would be actually wrong to generalize, to do the gross generalization. And then the third one, you see the common perception that print media is dying and digital is booming and this and that. And no. Let me share with you that 20 years back, when I became interested in digital journalism, I was made to believe that that obituary is being written for print. Now, this is something I'm talking about early 2001 or 2, that, and we had started believing that the obituary of print media is already written. But no, how wrong we were. Actually, recently, the print has shown resurgence. Yes, there is a stagnation in print, especially in English newspapers. If you see the history of last 1 decade, English newspapers have more or less stagnated the circulation. But about language newspapers, this is high time. I mean, they have been growing well. The average rate of growth has been 10% in last 1 decade. And languages like Odia, Tamil, Hindi, Bangla, they are doing wonderful jobs. And it is not at all dying. It is thriving, it is flourishing. And I think newspapers have become now more credible now, and more more interactive now. And definitely they are impacting, they are deciding, they are fitting in their role of change agent very well. So friends, this was like a small outline of my understanding of how journalism leads to policy making. I think at this point, I would invite questions. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It was a really insightful discussion by you. We will now proceed to the questions. To all the participants, the floor is open for questions. We have a question in the chat. It is from Mukta Mohan. Okay. And she says, hi Sanjay, the presentation is fantastic. I'm watching from the US and I'd love to know from your perspective, what do you think the biggest challenges are in journalism right now?
Currently? Okay. Well, the foremost challenge, Mukta, is to update oneself with the ever-changing technology. You know, every 6 months there is some technological disruption, and we journalists have to keep ourselves abreast with the technological advances. So the process of self-renewal, this is actually a very difficult one, and you have to keep yourself techno-savvy. So keeping pace with technology is one challenge that journalists face. And another is that given the challenge of social media, and as I mentioned, the fake news and other kind of, propaganda, how to keep yourself unaffected from this political propaganda and fake news flows. Social media, how to develop. A good journalist has a good newsroom has to constantly evolve or create good filters that ensure that fake news and propaganda items are filtered through, and they ensure that the reader or the user gets the true, authentic, verifiable, evidence-based piece of news items.
Thank you, sir. We'll go to one last question, and it is, what steps must be taken to keep political influence out of journalism so that the real issues are focused upon during the policy making?
Well, Divyanshi, before I answer this, I would take one query that somebody raised hand and asked this when I was discussing about the impact of English journalism. Somebody asked, then why are you talking in English? Why are you not talking in some English language? My dear friends, I would love to talk in Hindi. I would love to talk in Kumauni or Garhwali, and that is why I asked Divyanshi in the beginning that is it a bilingual audience or can I use language? Then she suggested, and I accepted the suggestion that since many of the students might be coming from non-Hindi areas, so it would be better to discuss them in a language that we all understand. I think language is not at all a question. Language is nothing but a medium. The real thing is communication. Communicating the idea, the message should get through, whatever medium, whatever language it may be. So could you repeat the question? As I understand, you asked how to keep the news process of news making free from political influences?
Yes, sir.
Well, now this is the internal code of conduct. Now this is your basic training as a journalist that teaches you to keep your head high. Then the value system that your organization has. For example, I can say this proudly that you just go through today's newspaper, today's Amar Ujala, and you will see that in Dehradun, I'm sitting in Dehradun, I look after Uttarakhand editions, and in these politically volatile days of elections, we ensure that every political party gets this equal space, and there is no motivated news items, no news plans. So this basically relates to your conscience keeping, the kind of like journalistic training you have received. And I think I'm fortunate that I work for an organization that is known to be credible and unbiased, bias free. So you have your internal conscience that will guide you. And I believe that still, I mean, I can name many examples, many newspapers and news channels that come true to their profession. They follow the journalistic ethics quite well.
Thank you, sir. With this, we have the end of the session. We have reached the end of the session. It was a really great talk from you. If you have any concluding words, we would love to hear.
Yes, I would just add to my last answer in answer to the query of political influence. You see your journalistic or your editorial freedom comes through your financial freedom. So if an organization is prudent enough, and if you do good ethical business, that would in turn give you editorial freedom. So I think those organizations which focus on prudent ways, the good ways of cost cutting, that spend wisely, then they keep their editorial freedom, their financial freedom, both intact. You see, so I remain hopeful. I'm quite positive about this. I think that Indian journalism is still intact, and political influences are there, but they are very limited. And ultimately, the voice of the people and the voice of common men will continue to be reflected in news media and in print media particularly, because print media is something I more believe in, and this is something I have served for my entire life. So thank you very much, Divyanshi. It was a wonderful session. I was expecting more questions, but I think time limit is there. But anyway, I enjoyed it. Still, if somebody wants to ask something, I am open. I welcome.
I think that would be it, because there are no questions in the chat. So thank you so much, sir, and thank you to all the participants for being such patient listeners. We would encourage you to participate in more sessions of the Policy Conclave.
Why not? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Nice. Thank you.